This is some garage time with my 2003 Audi S6. What do we got going on with it? I've been putting this video off because I got other stuff going on, but let's see if we can see this. We've got a couple five, let's see here, how many codes we got here? Two Lean Bank 1, P0491 P0159, O2 circuit slow response. See, this is bank 2 sensor 2. That was the last one as well. Heater circuit, bank 2 sensor 2, P0161. And then we have two secondary air faults, P0491 and 492. So we'll talk about the secondary air injection in a separate video. In this video, I'm just going to be replacing the oxygen sensor. And why would I replace the oxygen sensor? Not every time that you have an oxygen sensor fault, it's the oxygen sensor. We're gonna get underneath the car and talk about it more. Let me shut this thing off so I don't drain the battery. And also I'm gonna pull this old cheap scan tool out. Let's get started. Stuff like this is a little bit difficult to document, going through every little thing and explaining every little thing, but secondary air injection system, you have these things called combi valves, combination valves, on the back of the heads. This one right here, and then there's a pipe that connects it all the way to the back of the head over here. So you've got air from this pump down here. There's a pump right there. With the guy right here is the secondary air pump. It just has a fan in here, it spins, it gets fresh air from the air box right here from this hose, and then it expels the air up here into the combi valves for a cold start. So what I did was, I heard it running, but I also disconnected this pipe right here, which I don't really need to redisconnect it with one hand. Anyway, there's a electrical connector, which I popped this off. Look at this, this is a fancy little scoop for air-cooled alternator, and after that they went to water-cooled alternator. Actually, when I was here, I went ahead and pressure washed underneath the car. I degreased it and pressure washed it, and it looks great. This thing has an aluminum cross member in the front and back, and check out the oil filter on this thing. It's like a race car style oil filter, real long. And well, let me just go ahead and show you the rear subframe, because the rear subframe is really cool too. It's a big beefy aluminum rear subframe. See this nice cross member up here? This is big old beefy rear diff, S6 stuff. All right, that's enough. So I got this pipe out of the way, which I don't necessarily feel like popping this off again either. But see these wires here? Right there. So I supplied ground to the brown wire and power to the red wire to verify that sufficient air pressure is pumping out of this vacuum pump. Or I'm sorry, the secondary air pump. It's not vacuum, it pumps air out. So what I did was, I took my good old trusty power probe and I put power directly to it. And that pump is pumping air just like it should. So the next order of business is, we have a fault for both of them. So typically it's not gonna be the valves themselves, because it would be one side or the other. Most of the time it's gonna be the vacuum hose or the hose that supplies the air. So they have vacuum hose that pulls the combi valves open, and then it allows that pump to pump the air through. And there's a hose that's routed from that air pump that goes around here, goes in the fender well and stuff, and it comes around here and it goes into this hose right here, and that's what goes to the other combi valve over here. So that's pretty easy to see. Everything I can see from this hose looks fine. What you'll typically find is this vacuum hose. So already I noticed there was a vacuum hose down here that was a little bit ate up, So I chopped it off and moved it down a little bit. So now that one's in much better shape. But this one here is what I'm looking at. So this one goes to that valve, and then it splits off in this Y and it goes to the other one. And then I took it off right here and it goes to this actuator, this little solenoid valve. So typically you'd want to take an air pump to this and you'd want to try to pull a vacuum on it. But what I did is I used my good old mouth air pump. And you do that sometimes. So it's not pulling a vacuum and I hear it hissing from this side. So I'm gonna replace the hose or figure out where it's broken from here. And I can't really mount the camera. I'm just gonna fish this. I'm gonna fish this hose out off this combi valve. It goes to the back of it. I'll probably have to take this coolant bottle out of the way. At least take this bolt out right here. Let's see how much I can do with one hand. So, we got our Phillips screwdriver. And most of the time, you can just take this screw out. What I've always done with this screw right here is I mean, you could put it right back where you found it, but I've always just kind of stuck it in one of those little grids and tossed my screwdriver up there. And then, oh, this one has two on the back as well. I'm used to the newer style where those back ones are just little lips. So some things have improved. This one, you got to take all 3 screws out. So we'll toss them all in here. And then this last one. So lift this out of the way, just like that. And look at that. I'm gonna pop this off. Already I can tell that this vacuum hose is the issue. Let me get my light. See how it's just a little bit cruddy down there. As I was pulling it off, I could feel it collapsing in my fingers. So I don't know for sure if I tore that right there when I pulled it out, but see, it feels all right here, but up there where the combi valve was, likely it had some extra heat and it's just soft and spongy. So I'm gonna try to cut it back right here and pop it back on and see if the good old mouth vacuum pump pulls a vacuum. Just clipped off that end, and now you can see that hose is a lot more stiff. Just that end was really bad. So I'm gonna fish it back down on that nipple, which I could probably do right now. Let's see. Hopefully that's all it was. All right, back to this Y pipe. So follow our vacuum hose up here. Did I route it wrong? No, I didn't reroute it. Do I really have? Okay, I pulled some extra here. All right, now let's try to see what happens. Oh yeah, she's pulling a good vacuum now. Look at that, boys and girls. I just fixed my secondary air problem and my oxygen sensor problem, but really, you know, I don't want no flack. I understand it would have been fairly easy to pull that wire. See the wire right here? All you have to do is pull this air hose out of the way, and then you can fish the wire on top of the transmission like that. I could have gotten some fish tape, some old brake line. I could have easily fished that wire in and loomed it back up. I could have, but I showed you an easier way to get the wires connected on it. So I'm gonna throw this thing back together and we're gonna run it and it's gonna be good to go.